Hello and welcome to the Imaging Wire Show. My name is Brian Casey. I'm managing editor of the Imaging Wire. Got a great episode for you today. Our topic is the move to cloud-based enterprise imaging, and our guests are Kyle Souligne and Scott Boutilier of AGFA Healthcare. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So let's start with introductions. Kyle, can you go first and tell us about your role at AGFA?
Yeah, Kyle Souligne, the Director of Product Marketing for North America, primarily focused on our enterprise imaging radiology solutions and kind of focused with market trends and making sure that our product is fitting where the market needs us to be.
All right, very good. Scott, how about you?
Yeah, Scott Boutilier. I've been with AGFA for 25 years, started off deployment support, deploying our very first earliest PACS customers, and been through all the technology advancements, right through enterprise storage, virtualization, and I've spent the last 2 years concentrating in North America on launching our cloud solution, both technically and commercially.
All right, very good. So let's get to it. So HIMSS was just a few weeks ago, and there was a ton of talk there, and also at RSNA as well about cloud-based enterprise imaging. And so that's what we're going to dive into here in this video. Scott, can you talk a little bit about cloud-based enterprise imaging, how it differs from radiology's traditional model of on-premises image archiving?
So I guess there's two ways to look at it, Brian. There's the end user perspective. So with the end users, the radiologists, clinicians, it gives an ease of access. So a lot of the technologies that have grown to support cloud-based imaging, pixel streaming and so forth, they allow the users to access and have the same experience no matter where they are, whether at home, in the hospital, remotely. There used to be a need for heavy VPNs and maybe hardware VPNs. Now the hospital can advertise their imaging applications in their web portal like they do any web-based application, because they're pulling it down from the cloud and have like those lean technologies to support it. And the other is the core technology aspect. So IT infrastructure management, imaging is heavy. There's always a lot of storage, a lot of compute to support it. And of course, a lot of resources and expense go into managing that when it's on-prem. So taking all that off the hospital's plate, all that infrastructure management, capacity planning, and all of that, that's the other core tenet of cloud.
Yeah. So it seems like so many other industries have moved more quickly to cloud than healthcare has. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is technology. So, again, imaging is big. So they're providing the end user with the same level of speed and performance required some technological advancements in how the clients that were delivered images. And we have that now with our pixel streaming technology. So that was one aspect. And then there was a little bit, I think, of just nervousness around healthcare diagnostic data in the cloud, right? Having images and customer data sitting in the cloud. So I think it needed to be proven. People needed to see those early adopters succeed, and maybe some of those nervousness aspects started to quell a little bit.
Yeah. Kyle, are you seeing healthcare's resistance to the cloud starting to change? And if so, what are some of the reasons for the shift?
Yeah, absolutely. I think healthcare in general, as you mentioned, has been kind of slow to adopt all technologies, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges with healthcare that kind of make rapid, expansive rollouts of technologies difficult. As Scott mentioned, data security and patient information controls, things of that nature. You just really see a little bit of trepidation and a slower rollout of these technologies. But as we saw with the digitalization of film and digitalization of medical records, once the train leaves the station, everybody's trying to jump and get on, right? The caboose. And we're seeing that now, right? Like we're seeing that firsthand here at AGFA. The overwhelming majority of organizations that we're getting RFPs from, or that we're actively engaged with, trying to consult with them on their next purchase of enterprise imaging, they're primarily focused, probably 80% or more, on a cloud strategy for their next EI purchase.
So you're seeing 80% of the RFPs coming in, you're seeing asking for some sort of cloud architecture?
The RFPs and RFIs we're getting are primarily focused on, if they're not going to make this a cloud purchase, they are looking at information related to cloud and what vendors have around cloud. That's not to say that 80% of purchases will be cloud this year, but at the same time, I think what it's showing is people are more and more greatly appreciating, if we're going to make this change, we should probably consider cloud. And there's a lot of reasons why, right? Like, so why are they shifting, to utilize the cloud? I think some of the major things, like Scott said, imaging is a huge storage requirement, a huge application for most organizations. It can be some of the biggest footprint for organizations as a whole, and they just don't want to be data centers anymore, right? Like, a lot of them want to shift their focus away from data center management and more primarily focus on, how do we support clinical care? How are we going to provide our resources to do that, versus looking at scalability, which the cloud, can more adaptly provide, security and compliance. Most of the cloud vendors are very strong in this now. And really just overall looking at operational efficiencies and maybe some cost of ownership adjustments that they need to make for the organization. I don't think anyone assumes that cloud's always the cheaper option, especially in the short term, but I think it offers a lot of predictable costs and long-term results that you can get from that. That's why I really think that the primary market focus is moving towards cloud adoption.
I guess there's a, one of the things that was holding them back from cloud was a perception of there being risk. But if you're upgrading your enterprise imaging system in your PACS and you're not going with the newest technology, there's going to be risk in that, in not going to cloud. So, there's a risk of not adopting new technology if it's functional.
Absolutely. Most choices are, when you make a switch, you're in it for the long haul. So if you're going to make the switch, this isn't typically it's at least a 5+ year decision.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we've heard a lot about cybersecurity, data breaches in healthcare. It seems like every week there's another major data breach. Scott, how important are concerns about cybersecurity and some of the recent data breaches in changing attitudes around the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, critically important, right? Healthcare and banking, those are the two areas that security and privacy is paramount. So it's absolutely important. And to talk about running a data center, again, healthcare systems only became data center managers by necessity, right? And with that comes all the security around it. When we provide a SaaS in a cloud environment like AWS, they invest millions and millions of dollars every year in security, and they have the industry's top experts looking at their security. So, that's a big part of the adoption to cloud too, is that, you just touched on the previous question too, Brian, that when we delivered as a SaaS, we always had the latest application software. We're always patching, and, the software and the platform underneath is always constantly upgraded and latest and greatest. So that's the other aspect that, it's peace of mind for the end users, the healthcare systems.
Yeah. Now, the on-premises model of, having all your storage, in your institution seemed to work fine when PACS was just, when image management was just PACS. But now we've got enterprise image management. What are some of the disadvantages of the on-prem model when we're talking about moving to enterprise image management as opposed to just radiology-centric PACS?
Yeah, I think having it all in one place. So part of it is cloud and part of it is enterprise imaging as a platform, right? Because with enterprise imaging, there was a lot of fragmented systems. Converging those to a single enterprise platform in a single location like the cloud, it's ease of access, consistency of access. Also having that storage in the cloud, it's security and resiliency of that storage. You can access it from anywheres. When it's on-prem, you have to manage multiple copies for, security and data resiliency. That's all looked after, seamlessly by the cloud storage services.
Yeah, and the data archiving management, like how long do you keep a study on a certain type of media and when do you move it to, I mean, all that kind of goes away, right?
Exactly. It's just, there's a cost per study, and that includes all the archiving, and there's an SLA that goes along with that. And I mean, you know, ultimately all our persistent data sits on the AWS S3 storage service, which offers 11 nines of data durability. So, you don't get much better than that. That's a lot of nines.
Yeah, yeah. So Kyle, can you talk a little bit about SaaS, the software as a service model, and how that pertains to cloud?
Yeah, I think it's good that you bring it up because oftentimes we hear a lot of terms thrown around and they kind of get used interchangeably, when really they're not the same. So when we talk about cloud, right, like we just talk about cloud, it really simply refers just to those cloud computing resources, storage, processing, software that's operating to run the environment itself. And really, this is cloud hosted in a delivered over an internet rather than on-prem LAN network solutions. Cloud computing can be public, private, and then there's also the term of a hybrid model where you utilize some local on-prem computing connected to a cloud environment. SaaS really is more the delivery model, right? Where applications are fully managed to what he mentioned prior. SaaS is a delivery model where all of the aspects of the solution, as well as the infrastructure, the managed services, your ability to access it on demand, are all operated within one contract, within one payment model, and so that you're continually keeping your infrastructure up to date and maintained through that one delivery mechanism. So it's really cloud is cloud and SaaS is cloud, but not all cloud is SaaS. So when you're
Gotcha.
looking at these, it gets into this like, what is your cloud solution a real SaaS or a true SaaS? And I think that this is a topic that sometimes people, ask like, well, is it cloud or is it SaaS? And I think that that's probably a little bit more of the discussion that we start to get into now. And that really gets into, is it fully managed or updates, scalability? Is that all part of the service? Or is this just something that we lift and shift and host in a cloud environment?
Yeah. Are you seeing more interest in SaaS as a payment model for enterprise imaging?
Yeah, absolutely. SaaS, I think, is the end state of why, sometimes people are a little bit slow to enter into these markets because the cloud may not have been everything they were looking for. And SaaS really starts to add to the entirety of the portfolio offering. So it's not just a lift and shift environment, but it is, how is your system built to operate within the cloud? And will it be fully managed? I get 4 nines of uptime? Will I get, updates and upgrades in a zero downtime type of environment? These are all the things that were the promise of cloud. And with a SaaS environment, I think we really start to see a full fruition of that for our customers.
Very good. Now let's assume that, I'm a healthcare institution and I've decided to move to cloud-based enterprise imaging. What are the steps that I should take on that journey?
I think probably the most important is to engage your user base and your community. I mean, some may be nervous of cloud, some may have over expectations of what it will deliver. I just think you want to engage them and set realistic expectations. Secondly, you want to know where you sit in your hardware life cycle. So if you have some hardware that you may have useful life on, maybe you want to start with a hybrid solution and then gradually move to cloud so you can get that investment that you've made in the hardware you have. And the other thing I would say is really understand what your costs of running your PACS or imaging platform is. Ultimately, most organizations are going to come down to cost when they compare, and a lot of times the costs of running it on-prem, a lot of those get excluded. So heating, cooling, storage, all these things that they don't maybe factor in are important costs that need to be compared in that comparison.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things going back to what you said about other ologies, really like what Scott's talking about from a aspect of strategy on how are you going to move to the cloud. Also, you need to take into consideration of do you have a governance model for enterprise imaging as a whole? And how does this cloud solution look for your overall enterprise imaging strategy? Because there's different approaches, organizations can take and slowly move everything to a, as few vendors as possible with inside their cloud strategy, as well as thinking through what type of cloud to cloud environments you may end up having if you have lots of these imaging cloud SaaS solutions out there. I think it's just important, like Scott mentioned, what your transition looks like to think, long term and big picture.
Very good. Is there a way an organization can move to the cloud a little more slowly as opposed to all at once, like maybe through things like edge computing and what exactly is edge computing?
So yes, absolutely. Right now we're in a big replacement market in our industry. So a lot of customers and organizations, their PACS or their imaging platform is reaching an end of life, or they're 10 to 15 years with a vendor. So there's wholesale replacements going on. So in those cases, that's a ripe time to just move wholesale to the cloud. But when we look at customers in our base that may have an on-prem system, they may have several years on their hardware left, we gradually move them to the cloud. So we will archiving storage is the easiest first step. We have a cloud ladder that we call it that allows them to get there. So, those long-term or older studies that are only held for compliance reasons, they're easy to move off to archive into the cloud, and then gradually get more and more data up there, and then start moving the applications themselves. Edge computing, you did ask, so I will say that's really just a way to do hybrid cloud. So you put some compute resources on-prem to handle the workloads. I think all cloud solutions are going to use some form of edge computing just to mitigate DICOM modalities and the size of the data that they send up to a PACS or imaging solution.
Okay, very good. And Scott, what does AGFA offer in terms of cloud computing?
So we offer full SaaS, as Kyle said, we mentioned. So the entire application, storage, compute, everything can be hosted in the cloud environment. We do have, you can call it an edge device or a gateway or a proxy. We do have, in some cases, depending on your latency to the cloud, we do have one of those devices to facilitate the ingest from those DICOM modalities. Not to get too deep in the weeds, but from computing perspective, we are moving towards a cloud native application. We're well along our journey. So, today it's on a mix of traditional virtualized compute and containerized Kubernetes, not to, like I said, get too deep in the weeds, but we are on that track and ahead of schedule.
All right, very good. And what about adding other ologies to an enterprise imaging implementation? Things like, pathology is going digital. Cardiology has been digital for some time, at least most of it. How difficult is that?
It's actually easier with cloud, right? Because oftentimes a PACS on-prem solution is designed to meet a certain volume or size of studies. You have the elasticity in the cloud. So if you say, I'm bringing on something like pathology, which is huge data sets, that requires more compute, that requires much more storage. On-prem, that would require a procurement cycle and analysis of sizing, and then bring it on. With the cloud, it's there and it's ready. So it's really shortens the timeline and makes the entire process much easier for the institution and for the vendor.
The one thing I would add is I think it comes down to like making sure that you have a strategic approach to this. Not all solutions are built the same, right? So like Scott said, like we've designed our infrastructure really to operate with inside application services on the cloud. But this started many years ago with our enterprise imaging approach. And really, as we've transitioned to the cloud, we see great value in that because we can leverage similar services across multiple service lines so that we can support easy adoption of additional ologies, not just the storage, but image acquisition, QC, image rendering, et cetera, with inside singular service paths. And I think as, organizations look to move to the cloud, this kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, is really trying to take a long-term approach and try to understand what the entirety of what they're going to need in the future is to build this appropriately, and how those cloud applications would operate, and will they need to be segregated or siloed, is very important as you're thinking through the different service lines that you're going to adopt over the long term. Very few facilities just on day one implement like 6 service lines, right? You typically start and roll them out serially. And I think cloud, as Scott mentioned, offers a great opportunity to do that in a more rapid fashion than probably was available in the past with on-prem. But it's also important to understand how the singular application inside your EI vendor can support multiple service lines without having to do full-blown new applications within inside the cloud.
All right, very good. So Kyle, what else can we look forward to from AGFA in terms of cloud computing in 2025?
Yeah, 2025 is a big year. 2024 and leading into 2024, we really started to announce and release our SaaS solution in the cloud with AWS. We have now a few customers leveraging that solution, and we see more and more adopting it, seemingly every quarter. More and more customers are looking to adopt this. So we're really excited about what it offers our customers, but also where we can take this in the future with deeper AI integrations and automation capabilities. To your point, expanding this to multiple ologies and really getting that EI full governance strategy in place for organizations in a singular cloud SaaS instance, and really just the ability for our customers to get back to focusing on those clinical needs of their organization and supporting them how they need to be supported best.
All right, very good. Kyle Souligne and Scott Boutilier of AGFA Healthcare, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, signing off for the Imaging Wire, my name is Brian Casey.